Hey, what's going on, guys? OJ back here with another video. Today, we're here to talk about the most disrespected fighters on the UFC roster currently. There are a lot of fighters on the roster that the UFC does not like, and it's apparent by the way they treat some of these fighters, as well as the matchups that they give them. Right, and whether or not you like them or not, it is kind of clear though that the UFC is obviously trying to hinder their progress to try to make it up to the top of the rankings. Still though, I'm gonna give you guys one fighter from every division, starting from flyweight, ending with heavyweight. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Starting off at flyweight, I got Tagir Ulanbekov. Now, Tagir Ulanbekov isn't exactly a fan favorite, and I kind of understand why. He doesn't have the most exciting performances. He often misses weight and all of that. I get it, but at the same time, though, prior to losing to Kyoji Horiguchi, the man was on a four-fight win streak, but still the UFC kept putting Tagir against guys that, let's be honest, were nowhere near title contention or let alone like any stake in the rankings. Even though you could say that his fights were arguably robberies and they were absolute dog shit to watch, still though, Tagir Ulanbekov kept winning those fights, and the fact that the UFC had no thought to even move Tagir up against someone who's higher ranked than him, I think it's kind of clear that the UFC doesn't like him. All right, say what you will about his fighting style, say what you will about him being a weight bully. The fact of the matter is, the UFC does not like him either, which is why he's been getting these shitty matchups in the first place. All right, now moving on though, we got Mario Bautista. I couldn't really think of anyone for bantamweight necessarily. Like I would have put Jose Aldo in there, but Jose Aldo retired, so fair enough. Outside of Jose Aldo, though, the only guy I can think of as of right now that's being disrespected is Mario Bautista. Like, was Murad being disrespected at the time? Yes, but he just kept on winning to the point where the UFC kind of views him as low key of a star right now. But outside of that, Mario Bautista, I don't think the UFC really likes him. I know he's getting like good matchups like against Umar Nurmagomedov, but at the same time though, the guy is still somehow number 9 in the rankings. Like, how is Chito Vera above Mario Bautista at this point? How's Ayman Zahabi above Mario Bautista at this point? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Am I saying we should artificially move him up the rankings just because he had a close fight with Umar Nurmagomedov? No, but it does feel like based on the rankings, Mario Bautista is probably gonna have to fight down for quite some time. He's not gonna get any favorable matchups like a Chito Vera or Ayman Zahabi. I'm not exactly sure if that's gonna happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but compared to all of these, I guess, quote unquote stars in the bantamweight division, I feel that Mario Bautista is being shafted because he's not the most entertaining fighter on the roster. Moving on though, we got Movsar Evloev. Like, I think there's no denying this, right? Even though I don't like him, even though I'd find his fights incredibly boring to watch, even though we call him Grumloev on this channel a lot, Movsar Evloev is being heavily disrespected here because although he's inactive, although he barely finishes fights, if that ever, although he cannot stay active. Again, I need to heavily emphasize that point. Movsar Evloev is the number one contender, and for some reason, though, the UFC does not want to give Movsar Evloev any single fights. All right, now fair enough. He pulled out against Aaron Pico. But at the same time, though, why is he matched up with Aaron Pico in the first place? It just doesn't make any sense. Movsar Evloev, in my opinion, he is the undeniable contender, right? I don't want to say that. In terms of entertainment, I would prefer Diego Lopez over Movsar. But at the same time, though, for the sake of the featherweight division, we should have had Movsar Evloev fight Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 325 instead of Diego Lopez. All right. I will be rooting for Diego Lopez if he beats Volkanovski challenges Movzar. But at the same time, though, like Movzar should have been the one to fight Volkanovski, considering that Diego Lopez fought Volkanovski literally less than a year ago, and he's got one win since. Whereas Movzar Evloev is on like a 10 fight win streak in the UFC. Up next, we got lightweight Arman Sarukian. Genuinely, the reason why I made this video, because why is Arman Sarukian not fighting for the interim belt? Because at this point, right, why did we bother with the Dan Hooker fight if we were just gonna give the interim title shot to Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje? Like, Arman Sarukian beat Dan Hooker, arguably robbed Charles Oliveira, but still, we kind of count those, I guess. Beat Beneil Dariush. I was on like a 3 fight win streak before that. Fair enough, not against the best levels of competition, but still, Arman Sarukian deserves to be the number one contender. And the fact that the UFC booked Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje a week after Arman Sarukian's big win at UFC Qatar, just it's just blatant that the UFC does not want Arman Sarukian anywhere near the title picture. Right, and fair enough. I used to be the one saying that because he hasn't fought in 17 months and he's actively turning down challenges against from like Mateusz Gamrot and people like that. But still though, Arman Sarukian went out there, destroyed Dan Hooker, he cemented his name as the number one contender. Yet for some reason we got Justin Gaethje Rufus, who has had one win since 2024, fighting Rafael Fiziev on short notice, getting the title shot before Arman Sarukian. We have Paddy Pimblett, whose best win to date is Michael Chandler, getting a title shot before Arman Sarukian. Like don't necessarily care who would have got the title shot between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett, but the fact that both of them got it and neither one of them is Arman Sarukian, I think it just shows how much the UFC hates Arman Sarukian. Moving on though, we got Belal, remember the name Muhammad. Now, Belal, he was a meme for the longest time. Right? I completely get it. I mean, the guy literally went to decision every single fight. Not the most entertaining fight style. Very similar to Movsar Evloev, albeit he was just more of a memeable guy. But still, though, like, the guy is heavily disrespected for the longest time. Even when he won the belt against Leon Edwards, where everyone was counting him out, Belal Muhammad, at the press conference, wasn't met with that much praise from Dana White. All Dana White had to say regarding Belal Muhammad's fight was the fact that it wasn't a barn burner. Like I get it. That's not how Belal Muhammad typically fights, but still, it just felt like Belal Muhammad was uh he had to split the Red Sea in order to get a title shot. Now, fair enough, he got the belt. He held it before losing to JDM, and I was also happy because Jack Della Maddalena won. But at the same time, though, Belal Muhammad, I felt should have got his title shot long before. Certainly before Colby Covington, alright? In hindsight, Colby Covington getting a title shot before Belal was an absolute disgrace. So, Belal Muhammad, uh, he was just, disrespected by the UFC, and still to this day, right? The matchmakers do not favor Belal Muhammad in any situation whatsoever. They're gonna give him the toughest levels of opposition so that he can eventually retire from the sport. And that's just what Belal Muhammad's gonna have to face moving forward in his career. And I low key feel bad for him, even though I don't think he's the most entertaining fighter of all time. All right, now moving on, we got Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier could beat every single ranked contender on the roster, and the UFC will still never give him a title shot. All right, that's just where Jared Cannonier was at. right? It was more severe in 2023 when he was on like a 3-fight win streak, and they still matched him up with like Nasruddin Imavov, someone who's like below him in the rankings. And then following suit, they give him Kyle Barallo, the next toughest challenger. Like Jared Cannonier for the longest time has been heavily disrespected by the UFC. Now, fair enough, he is kind of old. Like I get it. He does lose fights, but still though, like the fact that anytime Jared Cannonier gets any sort of momentum, the UFC has to shut it down by giving him a matchup that does not make sense or a matchup that doesn't give any sort of leeway for Jared Cannonier to get closer to the rankings. All right, now I don't think that Jared Cannonier is gonna get to the title anytime soon, but still though, all right, Jared, like you could have given it a better shot than having him fight 3 opponents in a row and then giving him Nasruddin Imavov. Like, I just felt like that was a little bit too much. But either way, though, Jared Cannonier, one of the most disrespected fighters on the roster by the UFC, and I'm actually kind of sad by that because Jared Cannonier, he's very entertaining to watch. He is very fun, even though he's 41 years old, even though he's not in his prime, even though there's not much market for him because he's not the most entertaining trash talker. Like I get it though. Like Jared Cannonier, he's fun, so I just wish that the UFC treat him better. All right, now moving on to light heavyweight, we got Magomed Ankalaev. Now, Magomed Ankalaev, I kind of get it. All right, it's very hard to like Magomed Ankalaev when his biggest supporters online are MMA Joey and Kenneth Okoye. Oh, and his manager happens to be Ali Abdelaziz. But at the same time, though, Magomed Ankalaev was just heavily disrespected by the UFC when he was in title contention, when he got a draw against Jan Blachowicz, which, if you look back at it, it should have been scored to Magomed Ankalaev. The UFC went through leaps and bounds to make sure that Ankalaev could not get his title shot until like Ramadan of 2025. All right, now since that whole debacle, Magomed Ankalaev has went on to lose his title. And fair enough, I was clowning Magomed Ankalaev fans online, especially Kenny Okoye and MMA Joey because they were coping unbelievably hard. But still, though, alright, Magomed Ankalaev, he's not that boring to watch. Alright, he's not the worst thing ever. Like, is he that much more entertaining than Alex Pereira, Yuri Prohaska? No, God no. But like, I would put him up with a Carlos Olberg. I don't think that's that unrealistic to say. I think Magomed Ankalaev's not that boring to watch. And the people who are saying that, I feel like you're exaggerating to a very large extent. So, Ankalaev, I felt very much disrespected by the UFC. But looking at his fans, I kind of get it because their Ankalaev's fans are obnoxious as fuck. Last but not least, though, we got Tom Aspinall. I mean, the UFC could not make it any more clear that they do not want Tom Aspinall as their heavyweight champion. All right. First off, they made Tom Aspinall sit out for a year and a half so that John Jones can fight Stipe Miocic and retire following suit. Following that, they gave Cyril Gahn, someone who does not technically deserve the title shot, a title shot against Tom Aspinall. And after how the fight ended between Aspinall and Cyril Gahn with the eye poke, now the UFC has completely turned against Tom Aspinall, calling him a quitter, right? I don't think they directly call him a quitter, but if you watch any of the NPC analysts like Anthony Smith and Chael Sonnen, they're basically calling Tom Aspinall a quitter. All right. The UFC cannot make it any more clear that they do not want Tom Aspinall as their champion because it'll make John Jones look bad. They would rather want Cyril Gahn to win because they love the French market. They just don't want Tom Aspinall holding the UFC heavyweight belt. And for that reason, I gotta say, it's so blatant and the UFC needs to do a better job at hiding their biases against certain champions. All right, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. Otherwise, though, leave a comment down below what you guys think. And outside of that, I will see you guys next time. Peace.